Welcome to the Moonshot Podcast, the podcast where we explore business growth, inspire innovative marketing strategies, and explore the world of company culture. Now, here are your hosts, serial entrepreneurs and best-selling authors, James Philip Arbuckle and Kane Carpenter.
I want to know where the government's playing hide the GDP. Like, where are they hiding it? That 4.9% number came out, and we're all sitting around saying, where?
Yeah.
Where'd it come from, Kane?
Yeah, that was the overall sentiment last week, right? In all of our discussions on our text messages and things. Where?
Yeah, we got the text message, and someone's like, laugh out loud when someone asked Chamath where the GDP came from, and he goes, I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. We'll come back to that one, but the government's playing hide the GDP, and we're gonna figure out what's going on with that one. What they start off with let's just to get this thing going. They obviously have like switched up, and they've mixed in politics in the past. Kane, last week was all politics, right? We didn't even want to do a show.
Right.
Do you feel like maybe they should do 2 episodes a week? Where
I think so.
Yeah, okay. I'm feeling the same way. Where if I do one on politics, just give us the original with venture capital and PE and funds and multiples and give me that stuff. Do the other stuff too. Just do it on another episode, right?
It's either do it on another episode or rebalance. Because it feels like at least the last few have just, there is stuff going on in the world that needs to be talked about or needs to be opined over, but the general kind of theme of the show is just it's like 80%, call it 70% macro global conflict stuff and politics, and I don't know. It's very different than when we started listening to it, right?
You had a point though, like everyone looks like Gordon Gekko when there's a bull market. And, you figure the last 2 years or whatever, more than that, just say post-COVID, when portfolios were going crazy and everyone's making money, and it's easy to jump on and talk about that stuff. There's so much stuff going on. Very heavy news cycle. And now maybe since we're in a down cycle now when you look at IPOs and all this stuff, and the valley's not popping as much. We don't really hear. Hell, when's the last time you heard someone say the word unicorn?
Great point.
Yeah, so I think maybe I get it. They probably rolled that bubble for a couple of years. There was a lot going on, a lot to talk about in that world, and now it's dying down. But look, it's I'm an addict. You gotta keep selling me the dope. So there's other financial stuff you could talk about that I think would keep your core audience involved as you start to integrate some of this other like geopolitical type of stuff. But sure, slow news cycle in the VC world, then manufacture something. I don't know. Figure something out.
Yeah. Well, what did you think overall of this episode?
I did find myself at times fast forwarding through little bits and pieces. We'll look at the comments in a little while. Like some of the JCal stuff is, if you look at the YouTube comments, I'm not the only one that feels like irritated sometimes, I guess. Not a bad episode. I wish we'd hear from Friedberg and Chamath a little more. What did you think?
Yep, similar kind of. I thought it was one of the best science corners, at least that I can remember. There was super interesting stuff about the heating of the water. You're right. There was some interesting stuff around GDP, or at least that conversation. And then there was some interesting stuff around startups shutting down, right? And when we get into that later, I think we've got perspective on that too.
Yeah.
With some of the stuff that we did, so I'm excited to talk about that later. But yeah, it was a better episode than the week before from the standpoint of stuff that interests me, or that I when I hear it, I understand. So yeah, we're moving in the right direction, perhaps.
Let's get back to SaaS multiples and the effects of interest rates on multiples and multiple compression. Like, this is the fun stuff. This is the stuff we geek out for. And
Right.
but they started off with World War III in the Wall Street Journal. And when's the last time you read the Wall Street Journal?
I'm an odd case. I read it every morning. But yeah, I was thinking about my reading when they were talking about that. I must be missing all the sections where they're clamoring for war, because it's hidden somewhere in the newspaper that I'm not looking at.
Well, that's what I was saying. When's the last time you read it? You'll send me an article once in a while, but it's typically, finance stuff, stocks, and they're talking about this other part of the Wall Street Journal. It's kind of like warmongering.
Yeah.
And but I couldn't help but to flick through the news this weekend, and even online, and I just feel like no one wants any of these wars to stop. Like, I don't. Have you heard like anything about de-escalation going on in like Russia or in Ukraine? Right? Have you heard anything lately?
Yeah, I can't say that I pay the closest attention, but the kind of tweets or the X's that I look at, typically, you're right, they're not typically de-escalatory.
Oh, I'm not even on Twitter, so that's probably part of the problem. All again, it might just be a byproduct of the news I'm consuming, but it's typically I see a headline of "Let's send another $100 billion to Ukraine," and like, well, this doesn't seem like we're trying to find the exit ramp. It's like, let's just keep feeding it. And then I just got the same feeling right now with what's going on in the Middle East. It sounds like reading the news this morning, they're ramping up the ground forces going into Gaza, and from all signs around, it's let's send more money, more weapons. We have 2 ships going in. Oh, there's already 2 there, right? There's 2 carrier groups, one in the Persian Gulf and the other one sitting right outside Israel. Nothing feels like, do we seek off ramps anymore? Is the whole like military industrial complex just like, we're back? Like, I can't fully understand it. What about you?
I'm similar there. Like, the thing that's coming to mind here is it Buffett or is it Munger that show me the incentives and I'll show you the outcome? If you're saying that all the stuff that you're reading is not talking about the escalation, then like, there's some incentive somewhere. Maybe it is the war industrial complex or defense industrial complex that's pushing for this stuff. But that's what I'm thinking about, is whose incentive is aligned here such that war is the right outcome for them. And then I think about, just historically, doesn't this, I wouldn't say feel like, but doesn't this look like what you read in the history books when you were a kid, like before World War I or that kind of stuff, where this is the way out of a down market?
Should we get to the down market first? Are you just trying to? Are we trying to prevent? I don't know. Nothing makes sense, but you could see where. I mean, the economy is different though, too, man. Like, could we manufacture ourselves out of a war right now? Or manufacture ourselves out of a downturn from a war. I mean,
do you ask that from do we have the ability to do it, or
I just
we?
Economically we're different. I guess there's like so many things I just don't understand anymore. They talked before about, okay, we're gonna like keep the thing going in Ukraine to soften Russia, right? Then I'm like, well, what's the play in the Middle East? You feel like the attack on Israel was almost like they wanted to goad them into this massive offensive thing, right? I mean, I'm someone that's trying to look. I want to not just look around one corner. I'm trying to look around 2 corners at the same time. Like, I need a drone to fly down the block and see around the corner. it's almost like they wanted this to play out this way. So I'm thinking, well, what is the end game here? And is it, this massive attack that goes into the strip, and then it riles up other nations, and then it does break out into a big war in the Middle East? And I mean, Kane, do you think we sent out those ships because we either we're planning something, or they think there's a high chance that there's going to be problems? Like,
or could it be optics?
It could be, but usually when we start sending ships, some shit goes down. So, but again, it's like, where is this going? There doesn't seem to be an off ramp. Every day it seems to get tuned up a little bit more. I don't, what would Wall Street Journal's incentive be if that's, who was pushing that on the show?
I think it was Sachs. Yeah,
it was Sachs pushing that. Nothing. I mean, some things make sense. Where the hell are we going in the next 3 months? I don't know.
I mean, yeah, you've got me thinking now, because over the weekend, I think the headlines were that Israel's entered phase 2 or something, right? Phase 2 of the war. I don't know what phase 1, 2, or 3 is. But you're right. I hadn't thought of, well, where is the off ramp, and what is the actual outcome that is sufficient?
And I was trying, it's so difficult to just get a real opinion on anything anymore. Everyone has their opinion with a tremendous amount of bias involved. And
yeah,
I'm just looking for the smart people in the room that they tell you what's going on, and you keep looking around. And the closest thing I could find was, someone's like, look, people are trying to say maybe, don't do this ground invasion and slow down. And then, another strategist is saying, well, based on what was done to them, if they don't go in hard and heavy, then it's going to make them look weak. And like, well, I see both sides of the story there, but I feel like the whole way this thing went down with the paragliders coming in is to get a response that they're getting right now. This just pounding the strip, doing some kind of ground invasion, and I think that's what they wanted. But it's like, well, if they're setting this trap, what is that trap, Kane?
Yeah.
Is it to get 3 or 4 or 5 other countries to, start a whole war? Or it's, someone, it might have been on All-In. They were talking about we ran out of ammunition that we were sending to Ukraine, 155 millimeters. I don't know. So we had to send Ukraine some other weapons. Well, now we're doing 2 wars, and according to Janet Yellen, we can afford both because the economy's doing so good. I don't know how
that's
well
convenient, right?
Yeah, that's
convenient GDP number.
It's kind of back when Paulson was, has that sound clip out there in 2008 saying our banks or our economy strong, and yeah, that didn't make it 30 days, if I recall. I just don't know Yellen's going to want that sound clip out there. But it's like now we're kind of in the middle of 2 of these things. Is there another actor out there that we don't know that wanted this to happen so they can? Is a third thing about to happen? Is what I'm asking.
Great question.
I wish we were allowed to play Jeopardy music. It's yeah, but like one-off terrorist things here and there happen, and then there's other times it's just you feel like there's something bigger in store. I don't know. You ever feel like if there's people on the United States that say they're on the United States side, but if something bad happened to us, they would be over there cheering? Like, maybe not everyone's as down for the United States as they say they are.
It's a fair point.
And I don't know. It's fun, I'm wrong a lot, and sometimes it's you process these thoughts and you go, well, you don't want these things to happen, but you have to go, what's like a decision tree, you go and map out each way, and you wonder, like, well, where are we going to end up? Like, you hope things calm down and people stop dying, but it does seem like the Middle East isn't going to calm down anytime soon. Oh, what's next?
Well, I mean, if you're doing chronologically with the episode, I think they started talking about GDP growth, to which we get the famous Chamath line, which is where did it come from? I don't know.
We're playing high the GDP. Like,
high the GDP.
It's well, you gave me an interesting insight a little bit ago, and then I just caught on CNBC. Someone was on there. That was Morgan Stanley. Names up. And going back old school. Some investment bank dudes on TV or whatever, and he's like, look, man, like 1.3% of that 4.9, whatever it was inventory buildup. So it looks like growth, but whether it was replenishing or stockpiling, I don't know what you want to call it, but it's not sustainable. That's not going to be a continuous thing. So then we're down to 3.6 now. That's just still a good number, but then you mentioned another number.
Yeah, so consumption is about, I think it's like 2.7 of that.
2.7. So how much is like growth?
You'll have to ask me that a different way. I think they're all kind of factored into growth. Like GDP is made up of consumption, investment, government spending, and net exports. So all of that kind of equals growth. Here's the thing I wanted to ask you though, when you said that investment or the inventory buildup numbers, is that companies thinking people are going to continue to spend?
We're not saying growth. I'm trying to figure out like what's the real growth. And I'm not an economist, right? We get numbers flung at us sometimes, and it paints a rosy picture, and then hell, 2-3 months from now, that number will get adjusted down. We'll really digest what that number meant, and we find out that we really weren't growing that much. It was a blip on the radar where, like you said, we overbuilt some stuff thinking people were going to spend, or did we just, you go back, did we, summertime, did we not build enough stuff? Now we're just playing catch up. I mean, I don't know if that's growth, Kane. It's just we're playing quarterly games at that point, and it's not growth if you're not selling the shit, in my mind. Build up inventories, okay. And then do what? You're going to discount it in Q2 next year?
That's such an important point, because that's the issue with GDP as a metric for this, yeah. And
then so when I say what's the growth or what's the real growth, it's almost, you could like manipulate it if you wanted to. Let's all get together and build up a bunch of inventory. What does it mean? And because I guess, I'm in Michigan, so it's a small sample size, and there's been times when the drive-thrus were very, very slow around here, and I'm like, well, what's going on? Like, what do you mean there's no one in line at Starbucks? Like, there's usually, how many people lined up around, like, but I can just pull in right now and get a coffee. Like, there were times when it was just so slow, Kane. But I talked to you and like, well, no, it's popping down here. So, small sample size. But I would say for this last quarter, man, I told you some of the restaurants that used to always be slammed, wide open reservations, and drive-thrus are slow, and the stores weren't very busy. Some days not a lot of traffic on the road, and I'm like, well, are we slowing down? Or is everyone on vacation? I don't know. So I'm trying to figure out where, if you're gonna like get out there and say, hey, I'm sure there's tweets out there. Look how we're almost 5% growth. We're like, but are we? Or is it just some funny numbers? And to me, it sounds like some funny numbers right now.
Yeah, your intuition's probably right there. I don't know how. Like, adjust for inflation, adjust for, when the inevitable kind of consumption crash happens, adjust for that. Where's GDP? I don't know.
I mean, like, that might be coming to a town near you this Christmas. Like, Again, we'll see. Look, man. Everyone's been saying it for 2 years. It's taken a long time to get the $7 trillion we printed out of the system, and I'll tell you, one way it's getting sucked out of the system really fast is to those. What the hell's a credit card payment like today? Your $1,000 a month car payments, like all this stuff. And I was talking to a buddy, and he stopped and got some Jersey Mike sandwiches for him and his family. It's like $80.
Oof.
Like, holy crap! If you went into Panera Bread and tried to feed a family of 5, they'd probably ask your FICO score before you ordered. Like, it's crazy how expensive it is. And funny enough, like, I'm starting to see people I know that have money. Like, when you really hear them complain, it's like they can afford it, dude. But it's at a point where they're getting irritated. Like, you swing in and you're trying to, like, pick up some lunch food, and it's like $80 to get out of the store. I don't know.
It's a fair point. It'll be interesting. We're sitting here. What is it? The end of October. What does this end of year period look like? Right? The Black Friday, Thanksgiving, going into the holidays. Be really interested to see if we are able to hold up consumption.
I just, if we do, I have a feeling January is just gonna suck. And like, what does that mean? I don't know, is it layoffs? Is it stock market? I don't know. We know school loans are kicking back in unless they do something. And it was originally September, but they said now it's December. I think people have, greatly. You and I've talked about where I think a lot of people. I know people that thought that maybe that payment was never coming back. And let's just say it's $500, okay, I'm going to make a number up. And instead of saying, okay, I need to make sure that I keep my spending under control and that day is coming, they took that $500 and they bought something else that's reoccurring. They, whether they bought a jet ski or a second home, or that money's gone. And I don't know if they have that much padding left to service the debt they have plus the school loan. I'm obviously everyone didn't get themselves into that mess, but I have a feeling it's probably a lot more than we would like. Is that going to fuel some kind of crisis on credit cards or car loans? I mean, did you see the thing about the car loan defaults?
No.
I want to say it's at some crazy.
You sent an article, right?
Yeah, I just caught another piece of news, but I want to say they said 30-year high right now or something.
Mm.
So, but again, like, you weren't factoring in school loan payments of, who knows, $500 or $1,000, and you went and bought that new car at 7.5%, and 280 months probably. Who knows how long you financed it for? Thinking that I'm not gonna, I can spend that school money on the car, right? But now December that kicks back in, and does that kill discretionary spending?
I guess going back to the funny thing about GDP, right? The third leg of GDP is government spending. So if we pull from consumption because you're taking people, people are servicing their loan, and then the government spends it, does that just buoy GDP again? Like, that's the issue, I think, with the.
I'm trying to think of something else. I mean, I want to say we've not even really started spending the Build Back Better and the CHIPS Act money. Like, a lot of that stuff hasn't even kicked in yet. So you can see where that could, the average consumer out there might be in a tremendous amount of pain, and we could be like, well, we're growing at 3.2. It's like, well, is that just government spending? I don't
know. Yeah, the stuff sounding like democracy.
That's why people were predicting Q4 being bad. We're now. I mean, it doesn't look that bad right now. Earnings season looked decent. I saw McDonald's today came out up 14% on revenue or something. Like,
really? Goodness.
But the headline was something like a smaller, large cup size. Like, I think they shrunk the shrinkflation. We talked about it in the book. I think they shrunk the large cup a little bit. And don't quote me on this. I'm reading fast headlines, and that bumped their profits up. But hell, like, everywhere you go, everything's just shrunk, and it costs more at the same damn time. So I don't know. We'll see what look, if you had to figure out between now and December, or January to March is going to be a bloodbath. Like if there's going to be a bloodbath in the economy, it feels like Q1. I don't know.
I'd say Q2. Just
You
not
think Q2?
Yeah, I just think that if people do spend at the tail end of this year, then those numbers in Q1 will look okay, and then it'll be like the first, because I mean, what holidays are there in Q1 that we can inflate our numbers?
That's true. I guess I'm looking at more of a bloodbath of, do you start seeing the layoffs hit? You get past the holiday season. Like if January comes and like you just don't, if people just aren't spending money, the layoffs are going to start.
That's true.
And then that won't reflect until the next quarter, right? But if demand just drops off, are you going to see like a crazy amount of influx and layoff in Q1 and Q2? Overspent on Christmas, spent too much on vacations. Hell, they might even do another rate hike. You don't know. That credit card interest is siphoning off whatever savings you did have. Your credit's getting maxed out. You can't get any more credit. Hell, I saw on one of the travel websites you can like buy plane tickets on Klarna or some shit. I just feel like many people are going to spend down to their last dollar until their credit is completely maxed out, and then try to figure out what the plan is. What's that plan look like, Kane?
I don't know. I mean, this is a bit of an aside here, but can you remember last year around this time that the big concern in at least what we were reading was whether the retailers would be able to find enough people for the seasonal kind of uptick?
Yep.
Have you seen anything like that this year?
I haven't, and I we talked about this before, but hell, 20 years ago and every year before that, if you got yourself into a financial pinch, you went to your employer, you asked for more hours, you tried to get overtime, or you got a second job. Kane, I was like 16, I had 3 jobs. Like, come on. When your back's against the wall, you went and worked and you found a way to solve your problems, right? And, I would say the last decade, maybe that wasn't a feeling that people wanted in terms of like work-life balance and all that stuff. It definitely wasn't happening post-COVID. But maybe we're getting to that point now where, look, my debt's crushing me. I'm going to have to pick up that seasonal job at Macy's this year. Do you think that's possible?
Yeah, I think it's possible. I think it's possible. And I bring that up just to say that the fact that we're not seeing them yet, and it's usually around this time that we see those stories, means that there is less of a worry that they're not going to be able to find the seasonal workers. So whatever labor tightness isn't there.
I still hear it, not as much. Like this, you get bad service, we're short-staffed. I'm still occasionally hearing it. But again, like we went, I don't know, hell. Earlier this year, it was kind of okay. And then summer, it went back to we're short-staffed.
Mm-hmm.
And now I don't hear that as much anymore. It's like I said, is it a rolling recession? I don't know. Definitely not heard anything about the seasonal workers. That or demand's down. They're planning on demand being down, so they don't plan on hiring as much.
Which then kind of go back to that GDP thing, which is it doesn't make sense for the inventory buildup then if they're planning like it all. I can't really get a read on anything.
No, that's why I keep saying like I don't trust anything anymore, dude. It's
yeah.
Numbers get revised. There's these surprises. It's I don't even know what's real anymore. But on that note, let's keep it moving. What else? What else you got in store here?
Well, the next thing that the guys talked about is they start to talk about startups and the funding environment, and then also startups shutting down.
Like the ghost startup.
Yes.
Well, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. What do you think?
I mean, I listened to it. I don't know how closely I was listening to it, but that idea of this like ghost ship floating around the ocean for 18 months as they shut down and the layoffs and like winding down, and we had that boom. We had this huge influx of money. You have to imagine that whole like VC scene is tough right now, right? But I have a feeling there's going to be some more stories coming on some of these larger. They've hung on, but are they going to make it? And I think we created a lot of useless things in the last like post COVID world. There's a lot of things that got funding that I think we're looking back now and going, I don't know about that one, right? And what's your opinion?
Well, two kind of initial thoughts. The first is that this game really only works if that you can perpetually have up rounds, right? So it makes sense then that things have to start shutting down when you start to have down rounds. The second thought, and this is really just like kind of to lead us into some of the anecdotal stuff that we have for this point, but I hope that I'm sure that there are startups out there that are struggling from a funding standpoint that are doing important work, curing cancer, that kind of stuff. I just hope that we are good enough, as a community or the capital allocators out there are smart enough to be able to know which ones are worth hanging on to, even in the face of a down round or in the face of real struggle. So those are the only two thoughts that I have.
It would be nice if we could keep the, solving cancer startup alive, and if we have to sacrifice a couple of these companies who just ship you a box of crap every month,
Yeah.
then let's sacrifice them. And again, there's a lot of things that, I mean, look, it's business. If you can get someone to pay for it, knock your socks off. Like, if you can make money on it, go for it. There's things I go, do I need someone to ship me a meal in a box because I can't just take my ass down to Whole Foods and pick up some green beans and some chicken? And a lot of those things kind of busted out, right? But I mean, there were so many other things that I felt like the tech world in general was creating solutions for these problems that didn't exist. Then they spent a bunch of money trying to convince you that you had the problem, so they could justify their own existence, and that's a lot of that's coming to an end. Are we out there really solving any problems, or are we really driving efficiency? And we create a lot of stuff we got people to spend money on that they don't need, and then they're a lot of that stuff's kind of getting bumped out. So let's save some money for the people that are going to change the world, and everyone else. You can go online and pick your own clothes out, right?
Yes.
Like, I don't.
Hope so.
No, it's like, all you gotta do is throw AI on something. It's like beefjerky.ai. And, our AI bot will figure out your eating habits and what you like, and then we will curate a special box of beef jerky every month and ship it to you, and then those assholes would go raise like $100 million.
Sounds compelling.
Yeah, and like, I don't. It's been a crazy couple of years when you look at it, and nothing they were talking about was all that surprising. But look, what have we seen though on the outplacement side, on the layoffs?
Oh, I mean, we get the thing that's been really happening over the last, call it 2 quarters, is companies reaching out to us right when they feel like they're going to miss on the next round of funding. And, there are certain industries that have been absolutely battered, by this phenomenon. And it's a chain event. So we'll see one company and then we'll basically know that industry is coming. And then you'll just start to see all the other startups in that industry. The same thing happens. So I think the nice thing is that without placement, the companies are showing that they care about their employees, and if they are going to run out of money, they know that they're going to close. Well, let's at least be good to our people, which is a good thing. It's nice to see. They're not like going right down to zero and then letting people go. So, but we until I think on our side we see this slow down, then I'm not going to have any faith in the idea that the capital allocation game is on the way up again.
Even if it's up, I think they're going to reshape it. And I kind of had this pet peeve on looking at, let's just use the tech world. You've heard my opinions before on this, but I feel there's so much waste in tech with like headcount. And you have so many people that are just not productive. And they're just kind of keeping a chair warm, for example, because they have these fat margins and or a tremendous amount of funding. And I'm thinking, if I had to cut a sizable check right now and I knew the company was just hiring to where you became bloatware like Adobe, why are you taking the money and just spending it on people that aren't doing productive things in the company? And I could see where maybe some of those days are gone, where why is a fund gonna cut you $100 million when maybe you only need 60 if you ran shit right. And it was a lot of times tech, and it's just this wild west of just hire a bunch of people, grow, and then you're sitting around like, who's that guy and what does he do? Well, again, there's a lot of wasted money over the years. And
oh yeah,
it's maybe if you let's get back to sound business. And you ever give someone too many resources, how much of it just gets squandered?
yeah,
you
sure.
you start respecting whatever it is, because you become very wasteful, because it's like, well, there's more over there. I feel like that was headcount in tech for all these years. And then we saw the big tech layoffs, and funny enough, somehow the tech companies are still operating just fine. But it's how much more value could have you brought to the shareholders if you weren't carrying that like $100 million of extra payroll?
Mm.
I have to imagine the allocators are sitting back and saying, we'll write the check, but we want to see a tighter grip on operations and not just have it this wild west of just, we're scaling. We have to hire a bunch of people. I'm like, you do, but can you at least have work for them? Just, I think it's going to look a little different, and hey, we'll see though. Let's check out some comments. I do enjoy the comments here. I'll go read the comments before I watch the episode. And you can kind of get a theme. I can't really see them from here. What do you got?
It's a lot of comments about JCal this episode. We talked a little bit about this in our own conversation, James, but like Sachs' patience with JCal is legendary. I definitely subscribe to that. I think a lot of the times Sachs is very gracious with the kind of pushback that he gets, warranted, unwarranted, from JCal. But I get it.
I always feel like JCal is trying to attack Sachs in a sense, and then Sachs will just, his facial tone doesn't change, like you just said. He just brushes it off and keeps going. Or I would probably bite back. My problem with JCal is I always feel like he's trying to make Sachs look bad. And if the four of you were friends, why would you? It's one thing to have a spirited debate, and you can have a difference of opinion, but the way JCal goes after Sachs, I just don't appreciate that, I guess. And if someone was doing that to me on a show with this many people, I probably wouldn't be as kind as Sachs was biting back, I guess. because it really just seems unnecessary. Look, we know ideology. Like, you guys are just two different people. You're on both opposite ends of the spectrum. But it's like almost like J. Cal won't relent. And then Sachs just takes it like a champ. So, like, credit to him.
For sure. For sure. I think this is an interesting one. I think we would agree to this, but this individual, EPF Foresight, says we need to know that some of the best men in the top 20% of all of us are willing to take the time to take on actual challenges that affect all of us. Do not need to 100% agree with any of them to respect all of them. I like that. I like that as a comment. It's nice.
No, that's great.
Let's see.
Yeah, more J-Cal, more J-Cal, more J-Cal.
Yeah, it is, right? Yeah. It's hard to do these comment reviews here. Chamath getting red pilled is really nice to see. Gives me hope. Even dictators can see the truth. That's funny.
I told you before, probably about a month ago, that there's been a change. And, some might say that maybe they're doing it for views, or maybe it's just how he feels. But, like, I'm not saying the dude went full on, like, MAGA right. And I don't think Chamath was ever, like, super left either. But through comments in the past, you feel like he's definitely drifted towards the middle and drifting right-ish, whatever the hell that means. I don't know. Like, the goalposts keep moving for that stuff, but I wouldn't say he's red-pilled, but I definitely feel like there's been a shift in opinion. I mean, even look at the candidate they just hosted the dinner for, right? There's something there. I don't know what that is.
What's interesting about these comments too is that, okay, there's a lot of bashing one person or the other, but you do get the sense that I don't think right or left of center, we're not too far either way. I think me and you, James, and you do get the sense that that's what people are looking for. Like that, there's a comment up here. Chamath has gotten better. Crazy for me to admit. I think that is a comment to what you just said, which is, as we get a little bit more, just like, let's have an honest conversation about different things from the standpoint of not being too far one way or the other politically. That's probably what people are listening for.
They are, and I know there's been other comments here where people will say, like, it's nice that they all come from different parts of the political spectrum, because you don't want to sound like an echo chamber. But at the same time, I think if you had people that are, all far one side or the other, it ends up being not a very interesting conversation and not a very productive one. So you feel like if you had a group of people that were somewhat close to the middle, some leaning left and some leaning right, but close to the middle, that it wouldn't be an echo chamber. You would probably get some really great insights on how to really fix stuff and how to make things better. Because when you're so dug into like one political party, you have blinders on, and no one wants to get anything done. They just want their team to win. So I really don't have any interest in hearing like far right and far left people just bicker back and forth about their beliefs. As we've learned, it fixes nothing. Sometimes it's nice to just have some open-minded people grounded in the middle that can have a respectful and intelligent conversation about what the hell's going on in the world.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Love it when you legends talk markets and economy. That's, we concur with that for sure. Not to put words in your mouth, Jane, but I think that's the sentiment, right?
It is. Like, I'm trying to find a nice way to say this, but it's like, you don't want to come off as, just because you have money, you have the answer to everything. And I look at these guys like, okay, you're investing, you have some money, you're in this space, every day or most of the day you're operating out in this like startup, funding tech environment. And okay, now I feel like that's a space you should be talking in. And are you going to try to branch out into, well, now I can solve everything because I'm rich? and that's politics, and that's this. I can solve hunger, and I think like be careful as they start to like expand this podcast into more like politics and other geopolitical stuff. And they're smart dudes, but having money may not make you have the right answers for everything, I guess. So a lot of us tuned in for the VC talk and private equity and all this fun stuff, and I think we'll enjoy some of the politics, but man, there's a lot of people out there talking politics, right?
Oh yeah. This is a nice comment here, and I think maybe it'll be the last one we review on YouTube, but traveling to countries and staying in luxury hotels to have business meetings for a few days or even weeks doesn't give a remotely accurate picture of what a country is really like. For that, you have to move there for years, open bank accounts, rent a home, buy groceries, pay bills, and live. Only then will you see when change is occurring. That's an interesting comment because it's kind of verbalizing how I felt when there was that segment. And then kudos to Jake Halford for traveling to different parts of the world and experiencing. But I did feel that a little bit. How did you feel?
That's how you feel about Jake Hal?
Just that segment. There was a segment where he's explaining that he's in the Middle East and he's going to be investing in different founders and things, right? But to me, I got the sense like, well, you've been there. Call it however many hours that you've been there. Right? It's not like nobody changes that fast. Basically, this is what I'm saying.
No, and I don't remember the phrase. I used to watch Henry Rollins do his spoken word, and I was trying to compare that to some of these people, and I'm trying to get to my point with what you're talking about, but they're like they're like the magazine people of traveling the world, and like you read one article in a magazine that's like you're an expert at something. Just because you flew through Berlin and stopped there for 3 hours doesn't mean you know anything about like the food and the culture and the city. And you have these people that do that, right? And to expand out the JCal, and hey, all right, my own experience, I'm going to fly into a city, take a private car down to the Four Seasons, spend a week there, golf, do this and that, and say that, hey, I know, I went to blah, blah, blah. It's like, you don't know anything about that area, Kane. Like, you did get a bubble, right?
100%.
When people even come to Detroit, they're like, got to the airport, got in their private car, came to Birmingham, stayed at the Townsend, walked around Birmingham, and they're like, oh, Detroit's cool. And I'm like, well, hey, that's not Detroit. I'll take you down there if you want to go. Right?
Yeah.
You don't really know what this area is about. And, Birmingham is Birmingham. And you didn't really experience much here, or nothing, Kane. Like, it's nothing. Like, you didn't go up north or out west and sand dunes and lakes and water and the culture of Detroit and looking at Art Deco and the buildings. Like, you took a black car to Birmingham, ate at 2 or 3 nice restaurants, went to your nice hotel for your turn down service, got up in the morning, went home, right? So I do get that.
Yeah. Well said. We'll jump over to Reddit really quick, see what they're saying over there.
While you're digging, there was one.
Sorry,
there's one I saw that sparked this whole thing, and I don't know if it's in this thread or a different thread. You don't need to go looking for it, but the first 2 like comments were, as soon as I see politics in the title, I skip. And I realized, like, okay, it's not just me feeling that way. That if they're gonna go down this road of like heavy geopolitical talk, then I'm gonna tune in less. I the more they talk politics, the more I skip. I feel like there's just other things that they could talk about, but look, they're about 400,000 subscribers right now. You just sent me a thing, Chamath, saying they're going to hire a CEO for All-In Media or something.
That's right, yeah.
Obviously, they want to make this thing a lot bigger. And the venture capital PE crowd is probably about getting maxed out. So how do you make a podcast even bigger? Like, well, talk politics, right? So Again, I would like to maybe see a different episode for the politics, but the first couple comments in that Reddit thread was, I see politics, I'm skipping it.
Yeah. Lots of comments about his Jake House glasses.
Oh my god! So I had to just minimize the window. I don't know. I felt like it was some bad sci-fi flick. Those like reddish orange glasses he had on. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's like, come on, guys, we can do better than this, right?
So I was listening. I had my iPad on. I was in the home gym while I was watching it and listening to it. My wife walks in and she goes, "Does that guy always wear those glasses?"
Not a good look.
Not a good look.
Also, did the Sax's hair get longer, or has his hair always been that long?
I think it got longer.
Like, he turned to the side, and I'm like, man, the guy's got like some 80s rock band hair going on. Nothing new on the comments here, just same.
No, it's more just stuff about. Actually, Reddit's the comments are longer, I have to say. They talk a little bit more in depth about their thoughts on Ukraine and the Wall Street Journal, but nothing that we haven't already covered.
Yeah, it's cool to see that many people talking about stuff.
Yeah.
So I wanted to do this show. It's there's times that I think both of us listen to the podcast and then we wish it was more. And like, well, this is the more. Did you have one idea for? They're not talking much finance stuff. Like, was there anything in the news you wanted to cover that they didn't?
I thought it would have been interesting to hear their take on the UAW stuff in Detroit. Maybe, we're familiar with that region, therefore it means a bit more to us. But, breaking I guess we call it a couple of hours ago now, the last of the three struck a deal with the UAW. So I just would have been interesting to hear their thoughts on that, because look, if these companies are profitable, yes, but if you're going to raise wages, I think the deals are sitting around 25%, right? And they were asking 40. Well, what does that mean from a return standpoint? What does that mean from a future free cash flow standpoint? I just think it would have been interesting. But did you have any thoughts on that?
I just think that again, I could be sensitive because I'm in Detroit, and you could be sensitive to the topic because it's a big deal here, but was it not a big deal for the whole country? It's these are the same manufacturing things that we thought we had to save in 2008 because it had such a vital thing to the economy, and you had all three going on strike, and it had a lot of trickle-down effects at tier 1, tier 2s, and many other companies. So I thought it would probably have been big enough news for them to talk about it, but last week we had a whole episode on geopolitical stuff, and nothing wrong with it. I'm curious to see do they pick up new followers, or does the traffic drop on those particular episodes in the short term until they kind of bring in this new base of listener that's also equally interested in, or maybe just interested in the political stuff. But it looks like the union's going to get these 3 deals done, get people back to work. But it hurts so many people. Like, I'm invested in a restaurant that's close to one of the assembly plants, and our sales fell off a cliff, for example. I don't think, you're only looking at these people in the union and tier 1, tier 2s, tier 3s, other people that service those industries all the way down to the restaurants were, taking a hit. So it is nice to let's get this stuff wrapped up and get back to business. But it's not just that, Kane. I don't know. There was a lot of strikes going on. I think we had the casino striking down here. There were strikes in New Jersey. There's so much stuff going on. You felt like that would have been worth talking about just as much as some of the other things.
Whether people agree or not, I think it's at some level the UAW is a bellwether for that movement, right?
Yeah.
To your point, the strikes were everywhere. The other thing too, I thought that might have piqued their interest is that these guys, the big 3 at least, the Detroit big 3, in comparison to Tesla, since they're such good buddies with Elon Musk, and like what the ramifications were for that competition.
seemed like it's like a missed opportunity unless they'd cover it next week. Because a lot of the strikes are going on was the renegotiation of the contracts to figure out how EVs are going to affect the workforce, and the battery plants and all this stuff, and then with these new plants be covered by the UAW, I think. And there was a whole job cuts, this that. A lot of these contracts had something to do with the changing environment of EVs. So again, it seems like it would have been nice to hear those four talk about it. But, hey, it's the news cycle has been slow, but not that slow. That was pretty big news.
Indeed.
So, anyways, anything else on this one?
No, I think we covered it pretty well.
Yeah, I'll wrap it up, and let's hope for some more VC talk next week.
As always, yeah.
All right,
Thanks,
I got you.